In my opinion, one of the most prominent signs indicating that we have a massive challenge with mind control and the resultant loss of freedoms is that whenever people like you and I that are awake to these issues try to awaken others, the most common comment from others is that this is all a conspiracy. In other words, people like you and I try to wake people up, like family members, friends, coworkers. And one of the most common comments you're going to get back is, oh, that's just a conspiracy. But I know from my studies of the world's great religions that they have a long history of being co-opted by those with ulterior motives. Examples of motives are financial gain, behavioral control, and keeping people passive in the name of God so that they can take whatever they want from them and implement their own agenda, which has been going on for thousands of years. Can you share an overview of the history of mind control and its use to control the masses, and who you feel is most responsible for creating and utilizing mind control technologies against us, particularly since COVID started? So what's the history? And in your observations and studies, I know you follow David Martin, so do I. So I'd like to hear, what's your understanding of the history of this, and who do you think was using the technologies or running them or creating them during COVID and up to this very moment?
Well, I think I think it goes back far into history. And if you even look it up, it's not shadow banned on Google whatsoever. But if you look under media, the country, there's actually a country called media.
Huh.
And it's where Azerbaijan or Iran is today. And if you follow some of the work of people like Michael Tessarion, this is where we use the word media because it was this group who mastered these mind control modalities.
That's interesting. I never heard of that. That's a new one for me.
Yeah, and don't forget the ancient god Medea, where we also get the word media from. They say it's Medea, but it's Medea is how you pronounce her ancient Greek name. She was the god of illusion and sorcery.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because Lucifer is the god of illusion as well.
Yeah, I think this is where you'll always, you'll go back to some kind of dark frequency that doesn't seem to like life when you get down to the bottom level of this rabbit hole. But it was this group, and I've come across in my research, it's this group that basically understood that when you expose humans to repetitive content, I don't know if they're aware why, but I'm sure you could guess as to why. But if you expose humans to repetitive content, they start to mimic and emulate and repeat that content.
Yeah.
And from my research, it shows that, there's this loving part of our nervous system that wants us to be safe. And it sort of knows genetically that there's safety in the bigger herd.
Yeah.
And it's the repetitive content that's counted subconsciously by the subconscious mind pathway. So we don't know this is going on. And this counting of the most repetitive content is meant to reflect what the bigger herd is saying, thinking, or doing.
Yeah.
And then not only is that, outside our conscious awareness, so is the forcing us to go along with it and adopt it as our own.
Mm-hmm.
And when I explain this in my presentations, I can't play long videos, but I've given private presentations for many medical doctors, and you basically just bring out some hypnosis videos that you can find on YouTube where the hypnosis expert, the hypnotist, is using repetitive content, and then bingo, bango, bongo, within minutes, the person is giving out the answers that the hypnotist drew and sealed in an envelope 4 hours before.
Yes.
And this is where it sort of started. So we have this ancient group in media who understood these very simple principles. And there's another controversial author called Chris Everard. And he really goes into the use of psychoactive drugs to again disrupt brain function in conjunction with these basic mind control modalities.
Yeah.
So there was like the blue Nile lily and some psilocybin and some other things. So, and the beer was, the fermentation process of the beer by the ancient Egyptians. And there's a lot of connections back there. And it would be great if it stopped there, where you said, okay, that might just be some bending of the history or manipulation of the history. But there's a lot of Egyptian pathways when you get down and start researching the ancient origins of this. And then when you go to Washington, D.C. and see that there's a 555-foot obelisk, 0.5, and there's all kinds of Egyptian iconography in and around these power centers, you really start, I mean, there's nothing super concrete, but it appears this is just a mere extension of what this group already knew to control this many people.
Yeah.
And they seem to have some very dark goals with the control. It's not like they're just trying to drive a Lamborghini and be done with it.
Right.
It doesn't seem like they just want money. They want more than that. But it seems this is a big extension through secret societies, where a lot of this knowledge about mind control and the poisoning of the human metabolism are passed down through secret channels. And this, to me, is what I see historically, is this has been going on a very, very long time.
Are you confused about your life's purpose or wondering why you're really here? Don't feel alone. It's pretty common today. Guess what? You can join my Spirit Gym community, have access to my Master Key lessons, and get my support and guidance and the support of our awesome community to find your life's purpose and do all the inner work necessary to really resolve unresolved challenges, heal, grow, and identify exactly why you're here and what gems you came to give the world. If you want to join us, you're welcome to join my Spirit Gym community.
One of the things, too, that makes it so easy to mass hypnotize or individually hypnotize people, there are people that are not hypnotizable. If I don't want to be hypnotized, I can resist it. I've had hypnotists work with me before. And but the point I'm driving at here is that the unconscious mind is not discriminatory. You can use the same strategies exactly to produce highly intelligent, highly capable people with good habits, or even laboratory animals, or you can make them do self-destructive. You can program to go to war with people. You can well, look at all the racial discrimination and sexual confusion going on. I mean, you can use, in other words, what I'm saying is the unconscious mind is really a recording and repeating device that intentionally, I think, by nature is there, like you said, and like we talked about earlier, from an energetic perspective, to protect us. But the problem is it does not have a filter, a truth filter mechanism. So it doesn't know what is good programming and what isn't. And it's, I've done a lot of deep shamanic journeys and a lot of deep meditation and Tai Chi for a long, long time. So I've been a lot deeper in the psyche than most people will ever get, because to get past a certain point, you always risk complete schizophrenic breakdown or a psychological break. Fortunately, I have a strong enough ego that I can walk the edge of that. And I always hire sitters just because I'm going quite deep. But the thing that I found is that, when we get down deep into our structure, there is essentially layers to the unconscious. And why I'm sharing this is because in all my work through years of shamanic plant medicine work and in my own healing, I've been shocked to see how things will come up in deep meditations, doing work in the astral dimension, working with Jung's active imagination technique or plant medicines, and things will come up like childhood religious programming that I thought I was long past, and it's still lurking down there in the basement. And I think one of the things that's really important for people to understand is that the longer a program has been in you, in other words, the earlier it was developed, the more foundational it is and the more it influences all your other programming, because it sets up a perceptual field. So if you, for example, were raised a Christian and you think God loves you, but God will also burn you in hell, and that God is love, but God is also a jealous, angry God that says thou shalt not worship any other God, what you do is you set up a field of chaos in somebody, so they don't really have a sense of trust. They don't have a sense of truth. You start them off in this sort of state of chaos. How does a God that loves you will also burn you in hell? How do you get Jesus, who's the Son of God, who came here to love everybody, but then you're sitting there singing onward Christian soldiers marching off to war with the cross of Jesus going on before? So what you see is, and as you know this from brainwashing science, you set up a field of dissonance, and then it's easy to direct somebody from there. But what I'm really pointing out is, having done all this work on myself for years and years now, I still can get shocked to find all of a sudden there's a program in me running way down there in the basement from when my mother was a Christian Scientist going to a Christian church. She switched to Self-Realization Fellowship when I was 12. So the Christian stuff was from, when she started taking me to Sunday school and church when I was an infant. But you find this stuff running in the shadows back there. And these are the foundation perceptual filters. So you start actually unconsciously screening everything that anyone tells you. For example, if you were programmed a Christian, and somebody says, you really ought to read the Tao Te Ching. It's an amazing book. It's simple, it's profound, and it's far easier to understand than the Bible. You immediately have a resistance to it, even though you haven't got a clue who Lao Tzu is. You don't know anything about, the Taoist approach. You got no reason to not look into it. But all of a sudden you find yourself having this unconscious reflex rejection of anything other than the programming. And so when we look at, for example, Carl Jung says all children are tasked with the unfinished business of their parents' lives. So when we look at, issues like how was our mother and father getting along while we were in the womb, because that sets up an energetic environment that research shows affects how our DNA expresses itself, how the fetus forms, the biochemistry, the hormonal levels. Then you say, well, how was mom and dad and getting along, and what were the major world events? So someone, my mother was born right in 1945, just as the Second World War was coming. So she was in the womb during a period of war. So when you start going through all the factors that actually really create deep programming, many of us are unaware that we're constantly repeating our parents' drug habits, bad money habits, fear habits, phobias. And because of exactly what we talked about in the beginning, and me and you both running into this situation, you give people good advice, but they don't use it. I had to start looking into all this, and I was just amazed at how most of my work had to begin within utero, and also looking into the family tree and looking at what's being passed down generationally through generational trauma. And when I started working with that in concert with, rehabilitation or athletes, for example, that maybe did really well, got to the Olympics, but then can't seem to get back to their level of performance, and they're stuck and they don't know why. And so I have to work on these types of people. But it almost always, the pay dirt is down there in the first 7 years, mostly, of a person's life. And I think most people walk around completely clueless to the fact that this is actually still running them.
Yeah, we at my institute, we have a 150-point questionnaire that just asks the same thing 150 times in different ways, so that we can see all the patterns that are still there. And yes, some of them are financial. I mean, there's only 5 major categories of self-saboteur. Like there's the victim saboteur, there's the financial saboteur, there's the child mind, pain aversion saboteur. So, and there's 2 other categories, but you're right. It's all about trying, and the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So anytime you ask someone 150 questions, and the more they talk, the easier it is to pick out, of course, because you're going to see the patterns
Yeah.
inside. And that's what we really focus on. This is exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, unfortunately about that conflictual energy that say, and we do have questions in the questionnaire about, did you go to Sunday school? Were you exposed to any conventional religion in the first 12 years of life? Not saying it's a bad thing, but those conflicts, those basically it's just destructive interference.
Yeah.
You'll have one brainwave come in to your consciousness that, yeah, God loves me. And the opposite brainwaves with opposite peaks and troughs come in that, God's going to punish you and, put you to the fire, put you to the pit. Well, that causes, this flat line, right? Destructive interference will cancel both brain waves into a flat line. And that's also a form of weakness.
Yeah.
So I do believe at one time with great leaders, there could have been a transfer of spiritual knowledge without this conflict.
Yeah.
And this competing ideas and confusion. One of the best authors on mind control is Just Merleau, and he has the rape book. Yeah, his book is fantastic, and he dedicates quite a bit to confusion as one of the necessary ingredients of effective mind control. And of course, we all know, or maybe we don't, but this is why you could go to a restaurant with a mask on, and then you could sit down in a restaurant and take your mask off. That was confusing, and they said the medicine was safe and effective, but they needed full legal liability for the safe and effective product that was going to kill and injure people. So there was so much confusion, so much of what you're talking about, and it's a weapon.
Yeah.
It's really a psychological weapon to have a cessation of thought, cause a flat line in the prefrontal cortex, and outsource everything to the limbic system, where the jukebox of programs are ready to play at any time, that there's a fear response. So yeah, I completely understand your point. Is the more confused the person is, the more competing ideas you hold in your mind at the same time. I guess they call that the dissonance, that were cognitive dissonance. But the more of these competing ideas you hold in your mind at the same time, the easier you are to mind control.